Welcome to 7th grade math as we take a look at lesson 1. Lesson 1, of course, is going to really get you reacquainted with doing math again and thinking about all the different things you've learned in the past few years. And so let's get started. We see two ideas we want to look at today. First of all, arithmetic with whole numbers and money, and the second idea being variables and evaluation. And while these ideas may sound a little foreign, maybe it's been a while, hopefully these ideas will come across and they'll all make sense real fast. So let's get started. As we look at numbers, first of all, we can talk about different kinds of numbers. We can talk about counting numbers, such as the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes these are also known as natural numbers. And this progression of numbers goes on and works in that way as we continue to count. Very, very similar to our counting numbers are what are known as whole numbers. Whole numbers, of course, include 0, and they have no fractional parts, they have no decimal parts, and they also don't go into the negative realm, all right? And so we have these different ideas that we want to review and look at to start. Right? As we think about this, we get terms like consecutive coming up, and moving on, we can then see how counting numbers and whole numbers are now used for different types of arithmetic. So we start with the operations of arithmetic, and the first operation, of course, is addition. Right? Addition, we see the plus sign, and we can start to really look at some terminology that probably has come up, but maybe you're not quite familiar with every single time that you see it. So we start with the idea of addends, right, which make your way to a sum. So, for example, you can have a problem like 36 plus 472 plus 3,614, and that is an addition type problem. And to solve this, right, we're going to line up our place values, and it's going to give us the easiest. That's not what I want to do. And we can start doing our addition, and we're going to get a 2, a 1, and we're going to get another 2, and a 1, and a 1, and a 4. Throw our comma in there, and we get that answer of 4,122. Right? Adding things together is not a new concept. All right. For flips, after lesson 7, sometimes the samples will come at the end. Sometimes the samples are going to come right away. So in this case, on this lesson, we got the stars are going to mostly represent your sample. So go ahead and pause the video, run through the sample problem, and solve it here. All right, now that you solved that one, let's move on to our next process. Our next process, of course, is subtraction. As we look at subtraction, right, we have the subtraction symbol. And we have different terms, right? We have the minuend, we have the subtrahend, which gives us to the difference. Now, these terms may not be as common, but these are terms that you have heard, you have seen, and maybe they don't come up as often, but in this book, you will see them. So make sure you're understanding what these mean, right? The minuend, of course, is the first number. Most often when we're dealing with whole numbers, it's going to be the larger of the numbers. The subtrahend, of course, is the smaller number, and it's going to give us the difference, which should be smaller than all those as you're subtracting. So once again, we see our problem here, and the best thing to do is line things up in a nice way with our different ideas, right? We start in the ones place, we work right to left, right? 7 minus 8, of course, you can't do that, so we're going to borrow from here. This becomes 9. This becomes 17. 17 minus 8 gives us 9, right? Here, this 9, right, becomes a 4. I got to borrow twice. I can't borrow from 0. This becomes a 1. This became a 10, which became a 9. 10, which then we brought from that 10 and it became a 9. And from here then we can do what I was doing, right? 17, 9, 9 minus 4 is 5. 1, can't do it, so we're going to borrow here. Right, this becomes an 11, this becomes a 2, and throw a 4. And of course you can always double check your work by adding things back in, right? So we can say, all right, let's add 948 back in, and we should get a 7, carry the 1, 0, carry the 1, 2, carry the 1, 5. And of course we got the right answer. All right, so minuend, subject head, difference, sample. Go ahead and work through that one. Pause the video and work through that problem. Third order of operation is called multiplication. We have a factor times a factor. It gives us a product. This, of course, is going to appear in different ways between dots and this. And sometimes you have parentheses or just ideas right next to each other. So we can work at this in a couple different ways, right? I can move this down here, right? Lining up place values isn't necessarily important, but it can be helpful for different things depending on what you're doing. Usually there's different techniques to help you solve those, and we're going to look at some of those. First one, this is a good one to line up so we can see our place values, right? 3 times 164, so here to here to here, right? As you look at that, so we're going to take that 3 times that 4, which is going to give us 12, carry the 1, 18 plus 1 is 19, carry the 1, 3 plus 1, right, is going to give us 492. Now this number, right, if I were to ask you what is that number, you would probably say 2, but I would say that is incorrect. That is 20 because this 2 is in the tens place. Because it's in the tens place, we're going to put a 0 down. And now we can multiply 2 times 4, which gives us 8. 2 times 6, which gives us 12. Carry the 1 again, right? And 2 times 1 plus 3 gives us, plus 1 gives us 3. And we come away with this idea. Let me move this out of the way. And then, of course, we can follow through with our addition to get us a final answer of 3,772. Right? Once again, when it comes to multiplication, we can look at it in this sense with money. First of all, we're throwing in those decimals right away. And so working with decimals. And this problem also has a trick because it is a tens. Right? As a tens, we can shift that over. That's kind of like putting that 0 down right away. Right? See how we put that 0 down right here to deal with this 20. This allows us to just put that 0 down right here and do our multiplication. We see a decimal, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ignore that decimal then. So 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 1 is 13, carry the 1. And suddenly we have 9. Right? And now we have our decimal, so we're going to count our decimal place values. 1, 2. 1, 2, right? Coined that phrase, that phantom decimal, where it is, but then we move it, and then we throw our money sign to get $93.60 for a final answer. All right, here's one more look at multiplication. Go ahead and solve that problem. From here, we get to our fourth order of operation, which is division. Division, of course, is dividend minus divisor equals a quotient. And this is one that you really got to pay attention to understand and read a division problem correctly, because we get this symbol, we get the fraction symbol, we get the box, and all of those things really need to be read correctly. So if I see 1,234 divided by 56, right, I can write that like this, right? Because that's going to be the easier way to solve this, right? But I have to read it still correctly. It's this number here, right, divided by this number here, which is what our sentence reads right here. But we go ahead and do this. 56 goes into 1, 0 times 56 goes into 12, 0 times, right? And you can write those zeros if that helps you out, guides you correctly, right? If your mind says, all right, I understand that, of course you could skip that. And then we're going to get to here. We're going to say times 2. 2 times 56 then. It's going to put a 2 down here, carry a 1, and it's going to give us 112. We're then going to subtract, and we're going to get an answer of 114. And once again, we can quickly see that, okay, once I've done that subtraction, it's going to go in 2 more times again and give me an answer of 112 again. Had to extend that page a little bit, right? With the 2 left over. And as we get up here, this is really where we're stepping up to the next level, right? We've talked about remainers. That's a past experience. We've talked about taking that remainder and putting it over your divisor and then reducing that fraction, right? You could also talk about, okay, the decimal, right? We could add a decimal here and, add a 0, bring the 0 down, nothing, add another 0, bring it down, right? There's all these different processes that we can use to get us to an answer, and you're going to have to use all these processes this year. For today, we're just going to leave it as a fraction. 2 over 56, we're going to reduce it, right? Divide by 2. Divide by 2, that's going to give us 1 over, what is that, 28? 28. So we're going to say this equals 22 and 1/28, right? The book might even be nice enough to say, oh, just make it a remainder 2 just for this first week, right? But I say that's way too easy. You guys are smarter than that, right? All right, there you go. There's your star problem. That's your sample problem. Go ahead and solve $12.60 divided by 5. Remembering how to divide with the decimal, of course, putting the decimal that is inside the box, right? The dividend, the decimal goes straight up in this case. As we move on then to finish up this lesson, we get into what are known as variables. This is your X, this is your Y, this is your M, this is your Q's, this is your P's. Lots of different letters can serve as variables, but variables are going to become a bigger and bigger part of mathematics as we look at these processes. And that's where we get this term evaluation, because sometimes we're going to be given the values, like in our examples here, right? We have our X equals 10 and our Y equals 8. And because we are given those values, we can look at a problem such as X plus Y, and we can say, all right, if X equals 10 and Y equals 8, that means 10 plus 8 to give me an answer of 18. Right? And so that's how we evaluate those statements based off of what we know, right? And there will be plenty of time where we're going to be looking for these unknown ideas and rearranging them and working through them throughout this year. So as we finish up this lesson, here are 3 more samples. Go ahead and plug in those X and those Y's and solve for those different ideas, remembering to reduce and whatnot when needed. All right, that's a great first video for 7th grade math. Let's call it a video. I don't know if we want to call it a day, but call it a video and get 7th grade math rolling.